I'm doing this film as a history for the McCorkle, Scharenzel, Anderson families. So I guess we'll begin. My mother and father were married in Illinois, but met on a boat trip in Canada. And Daddy somehow opened up the conversation, and by the time the trip was over, Daddy had determined that he wanted to marry Mother. They had my sister and me, and that was all in the way of children. My mother's name was Avis Anderson. She was pure Swede, born in Illinois, which was a headquarters for Swedish immigrants. She was one of 7 children. Mother grew up on a farm and was very, very strong-willed, incredibly strong-willed, so much so that her mother, all the children had chores to do, and Mother would hide, do anything to avoid doing them. And so my grandmother finally just threw up her hands and said, okay. And with this very strong will, Mother accomplished a lot in her lifetime. None of her family had gone to college. Well, when she was 18, I guess, or 17, she decided she wanted to become a teacher. So she asked her father to lend her the money to go to college. And after months of begging, he finally said, all right, Avis, you go ahead and go. She went to Bradley University in Illinois, and it's normally a 4-year teaching course, and her determination was so strong to get into the field that she did it in two years. And as a result, when she went home, she had overworked her eyes so much that she became blind for a whole summer. Well, Mother all of her life was that strong-willed. My father came from Vienna. My father was an elegant, suave man. My mother worked during the war and before the war, actually, because Daddy was very romantic, very impractical Viennese Austrian man with the world's greatest taste in clothing and design and anything other than practical things. So Mother really had to work. He graduated from high school when he was 16, which everyone did at that time. And there was a competition in Vienna for the brightest boy in the city of millions of people. And for whatever reason, Daddy took the examination and was designated the brightest boy in Vienna. So the point of telling you all of this is that good brains. Not that my sister and I used ours, we didn't. But Cliff did, Claire, Karen, my children, and hopefully all of you who are watching this 50 years from now will be using yours. It's there if you just use it. Anyway, Mother and Dad were together for 25 years, and my father passed away. He was only 64 years old, and he died of a heart attack. When I was growing up, we had 2 homes. What we called a winter home in Seattle on Queen Anne Hill, and then our summer home on the beach, Magnolia Beach. Daddy built this house on the beach on a bulkhead, and it had telephone poles that supported the decking and it was a large deck with a ship's railing around 3 sides. Daddy put in swings on the bulkhead, and we had a hammock, which everyone fought over. Daddy always bought things that served as rafts out away from the house. We'd either swim to the rafts or rowboat to the rafts, and we had 1 or 2 rowboats. Huge telescope that we could look out towards Mount Rainier, which was beautiful, and just a panoramic view of Seattle. As time went on, Daddy worked always on this summer home. There was a deck off of the living room, and we'd have meals on the porch and just scrape leftover food over the railing into the water, which was fun. And it was absolutely a wonderful house, just wonderful. Not beautiful, but wonderful. And everybody wanted to come to the Scherenzels' summer home. There certainly was no shortage of boys, for sure. They taught me between the 7th and 8th grades how to dance, how to accept a compliment. When someone gives you a compliment, you say one thing: thank you. A lesson very well learned. My grandparents' parents came over from Sweden, and there was a community of Swedes in Illinois, around the Galesburg area. So that's where my great-grandparents, whom of course I never did meet, where they settled into farming. My grandmother's maiden name was Linderholm, and my grandfather's name was Anderson. My grandparents were both Swedish. My grandmother had 9 children. 2 passed away, so there were 7 children that they raised. My grandfather had a farm in Altoona, Illinois. He was a very successful farmer, hardworking. He sold the farm to one of his children. My grandfather and grandmother in turn bought a rather large, very nice house in Galesburg, Illinois. But I do remember the house because I was in Altoona and Galesburg when I returned from Vienna. When my Uncle Tony came over from Vienna to spend Christmas with our family in Seattle, and my Uncle Charlie, Daddy's brother, and Uncle Tony's brother from Redding, California. Well, Uncle Tony decided, and I was 10 years old, just 10, he decided that he really wanted to take me back with him to Vienna. Mother and Dad kept asking me, Joni, do you want to go? And to me it was a question, at barely age 10, do you want to go and stay all night with a friend? You know, nothing, you know, the concept of a year away from the family didn't occur to me at all. They finally, because of my insistence and my lack of knowledge of being gone for a year, Mother and Dad finally said, yes, you can go. We traveled across the country to New York by bus, so Uncle Tony could see the United States, you know, as much as possible on major freeways. And then we took a ship, the Bremen, and the year was January of 1938. And we took the Bremen to Hamburg, Germany, and then the train to Vienna. were met at the train by my Aunt Fanny, Uncle Tony's wife, and his 4 children. Uncle Tony had bought, which I didn't know, an Indian outfit for me to wear, and told me to put it on before we arrived actually in Vienna, and get off the train whooping like an Indian, which I did. And Uncle Tony had not told Aunt Fanny or my cousins that he was bringing anyone home, much less an Indian. I was there for 1.5 years, and psychologically, it really did a great deal of damage to me forever. I still have repercussions as a result of having been away, like a kind of as if Mother and Daddy had thrown me away for a year. And when they wrote letters, I didn't want to read them. I was that psyched out. Hitler invaded Austria March 30th of 1938. And as a result, it was a very interesting time. Not that I thought anything was strange, because I didn't have anything to relate to as far as, you know, an occupation by a dictator is concerned. Finally, in July of 1939, which was 1.5 years being gone from my mother, father, and sister, Uncle Tony said, Joan, war is imminent, and it was, because we had firefighting equipment in our home. Everyone did, which consisted of a sand bucket, a fire extinguisher, gas masks for every member of the family. So we knew that war was going to be coming, but anyway, I didn't know. I didn't think about it because I was 11.5 then, awfully young. And Uncle Tony said, Joni, you've got to go home. The war is imminent, but I don't know if I can get you home. You may have to go to Holland and by yourself somehow book passage to the United States. Well, fortunately that didn't happen, and I did take one of the last ships home from Hamburg, Germany, and the ship was named Hamburg, to New York, where my mother and sister met me. And it was the year of the 1939 World's Fair in New York. And we went to that, of course, and I spoke very little English by that time when I got off the boat, very little English. And of course, hadn't spoken in German when I went to Vienna. So it was tough. We traveled back across the country, stopping for all kinds of sightseeing adventures, and finally came to Seattle. And I was 11.5, had left when I was in the 5th grade, and missed half of the 5th, all of the 6th, and they put me into the 7th grade with my former classmates, and I had missed all that schooling. I was a mess. I really was a mess, but anyway. Finally went to high school and met my best friend there named Jean, my sophomore year in high school. And we had a wonderful, wonderful time. Her father had a lot of money. Cars were not being made during the war at all. But for Jean's 16th birthday, her father gave her a Chevy convertible, a brand new Chevy convertible, which was absolutely out of sight. And we went everywhere with it. And everyone wanted to join us, so it was a time of much fun. When I got to high school, There were dances at least 3 weekends each month. That was our social life. Seldom did we go to movies with boys. And at every dance, whether it was a semi-formal dance or PTA or sock hop, whatever, there was always a prize dance. The music to the prize dance was Glenn Miller's Stardust. It was interesting to see how many boys would ask me to go to the dances, and one weekend there were 14. And having this inferiority complex, which I did big time, I would always accept the first person who asked me and never ever wait to be asked by the person I really wanted to go with. But invariably that person would call, but I couldn't go because I was trained never ever to break a date. Favorite thing to do was to listen to Lux Radio Theater.
The Lux Radio Theater.
They had wonderful hour-long dramas on the radio. And Norma and I would sit glued to the radio listening to the Lux Radio Theater. And then there were programs like The Shadow, and it was The Shadow Knows.
The Shadow Knows.
Every night at 8 o'clock was Glenn Miller. Loved the 15-minute long Glenn Miller program. Dreams. Dream when you're feeling blue.
When you're feeling blue. Dream.
Oh, my favorite movie stars were, and I tried so hard to be like either one of them. Jeanette MacDonald, who was a singer. Jeanette MacDonald and Nelson Eddy. I would close the door into the living room and sing. And actually, I developed a rather good voice, I guess. My other favorite movie star was Sonja Henie. She was an ice skater. I wanted to skate like Sonja Henie. So I would go every day to the ice arena. And Mother and Dad never had the money to pay for skating lessons, so it was all self-taught and very poorly. But I loved it, and I felt very pretty. I liked Life magazine because it was pictures with captions and quick and easy to read and kind of gossipy and fun. After high school, went to the University of Washington. My sister was 2 years ahead of me, and she had pledged the sorority of Kappa Kappa Gamma. And so when I went to the University of Washington, I went through Rush. I didn't want to pledge Kappa Kappa Gamma. There was another house that I liked better because I identified with the girls more, and Norma said, Joni, you have to pledge. You just have to. That's all there is to it. And I'm very glad in retrospect that I did, because it's a very prestigious house to have belonged to, although I got nothing from it. I really didn't. I met Jack McCorkle at the University of Washington. He had gone to the University of Washington for 2 years prior to going into the service as a Navy Air Force cadet. He developed a physical problem that they could not diagnose or correct. As a result of that, he, even though his grades didn't, were not outstanding, which is required of Stanford or Harvard or Yale or any school like that, he got into Stanford. He came then, my freshman year in college, to Seattle on vacation to see his fraternity friends. I was a Kappa, and we had an exchange with the fraternity of Beta Theta Pi. And I had been preferenced by a boy named Bob Kercheval. The boys would come to the sorority house and pick up their dates, and there was the social chairman, would pair people off. And I came tripping down the stairs and saw a very attractive man, and I said, Bob, I'm Joan. He said, no, I'm not Bob. I'm Jack McCorkle from Stanford. Bob couldn't come, so he suggested I come. So we were together for the duration of the exchange, which was 1.5 hours. And he was leaving the next day. And apparently he decided that he was going to marry me. And I was a freshman in college. So he began writing to me. Then he came to Seattle not until the end of summer. The day that he came to Seattle to see me, we went out on a date, and on our second evening together, he proposed, and I said yes. He was very, very attractive, had all the prerequisites that were necessary in 1946 for an enviable marriage by all my sorority sisters. My sister, my parents certainly agreed. Jack and I were married in May of 1947. And that was the year of Christian Dior's new look. And it was broad shoulders and tiny waists, full skirts. We were married in Seattle, and I was 19 and a half, a baby. Reception was at the Kappa House. We went on our honeymoon to the Oregon coast and spent 3 or 4 days, something like that, at the Esther Lee Motel overlooking the ocean. The view didn't make any difference at all. I mean, here we were on our honeymoon. Jack got a job with Procter & Gamble in Salem, Oregon. He was a soap salesman. And Salem at that time, in 1946, was the capital of Oregon, but a very, very unsophisticated small town atmosphere. I think there was one nightclub and maybe 2 movie theaters, which makes it sound really teeny tiny. It wasn't that tiny, but anyway, for lack of anything better to do, we decided to have a child, a baby, and had decided that we wanted a baby born in the spring because all of our birthdays were in the fall. We chose the month of April for our child to be born, and it worked. And Cliff was born, and when he was 6 months old, my father passed away. He did have a chance to see Cliff, and he was thrilled. He was just thrilled with his first grandchild and a boy because he had had no sons. When Jack and I moved to Salem, Oregon, we found a little house in a little community of little houses. And it was a wonderful little house. We didn't have any furniture, so he and I made the sofa from a twin bed, and he made the back of apple crates. And then I reupholstered everything. There's very little in that sort of thing that I can't do. Then we bought a couple of pieces of furniture. I made the drapes, reupholstered a wing chair that Mother gave me, and the sofa, and that was really all the room there was in the living room. But it was a fun thing, and I was pregnant with Cliff throughout that time period. We stayed in Salem for a total time of 1.5 years, and then Jack decided that we should move to San Francisco, and he wanted to be in the advertising field because his uncle, his favorite Uncle Herb, was in advertising. So Cliff, Mother, and I set out in the car for the city. When we moved to San Francisco, Jack had found a summer home for us to live in San Anselmo, which is a suburb of San Francisco. And Mother slept on the sleeping porch. It was winter. It was cold. There were huge cracks under the door. There was a fireplace, though, and in this summer home. Finally, spring came, and the people were coming back for their summer vacation because it was their summer home. So we moved then to San Francisco, to Park Merced, which is a large community that Metropolitan Life Insurance built. We were there for 6 years. I had Claire there, and eventually Karen there. So our 3 children, Cliff, Claire, Karen. We lived in Park Merced for 6 years, and then built a home, small home, in Orinda, California. We loved the house, we really did, and it was small but wonderful. And Jack was working for Kaiser Aluminum at that time, which is located in Oakland. He decided that he wanted to change jobs. He got a job in Reno, Nevada, as advertising director of Harrah's, which is a very prestigious job. As a matter of fact, Bill Harrah, when he went to work there, told him all of his executives were given cars, any car they wanted, up and to a Jaguar or Mercedes, but not a Ferrari, not a Rolls Royce, not a Bentley or anything like that. Bill had those, Bill Harrah. So Jack chose a Jaguar, and we loved the car, except it was in the garage probably 6 months out of each year that we had it. Just absolute lemon. When it worked, it was wonderful. But when it was broken, it was broken. In 1964, I went into interior design at the recommendation of a developer for interior designers in San Francisco, Henry Adams. Henry loved what we had done with our big house here in Reno, and decided that I should go to work at the one really good furniture store in Reno as a designer apprentice, which I did. And after, I think about a year and a half, I opened my own interior design studio. It was something I did then from 1964, my own business, Joan McCorkle Interiors, till 1998. So after 40 some years, I was no longer an interior designer, although I did continue doing some things here at home, the home I have now, which I love. Jack was at Harrah's for 6 years. It was a fun time for Jack and me. We had more money than we had ever had, and we'd never had much. And an unlimited expense account. We could go anywhere on business on the expense account. We could entertain any of our friends at Harrah's or in Reno at the best restaurants on the expense account. We really did have fun doing it. We really did. Jack decided, however, that he didn't want to be in advertising all his life. So he studied for a realtor's broker's license, which you could get at that time with the first bit of schooling you had, and went into real estate then. But it was not a good time for real estate. Our marriage really suffered, although it had had problems prior to that time. Jack was very, very nice, except I decided that I didn't want to spend the rest of my life with him. So in 1967, after he had left Harrah's, I asked him for a divorce, and we had been married 20 years. He was devastated, but married a friend of mine, Helmy Horgan, and they were married for 34 years. My children were very, very successful in school, both grade school and high school and college. Cliff was always class president, and when he went to high school, he was voted most likely to succeed. At age 29, he called one day and said, "Mom, I'm going to run for Nevada State Senate." Cliff won. My second child, Claire, inherited some of my mother's and Cliff's determination, and when she was in junior high school at Billinghurst, she decided to run for student body president because if my brother can do it, so can I. And believe it or not, she won. And she was the second girl ever to have been elected as student body president. Claire was a cheerleader at Reno High, and she loved it. My youngest daughter, Karen, was the original hippie, absolutely one of the original hippies in the 1960s. Anything you can think of pertaining to a hippie, she was. And when she was in her early 30s, decided that she wanted to be a school teacher, like Momo, like my mother, Momo. In this time period, or prior actually to this time period, Karen had this desire, a real desire, passion almost, to paint. And she really did some exciting things. I met at a party a man named Frank Davison, who was an artist, is an artist, and very eccentric, but he did persuade me to marry him. So we did get married. He had never had a child. Quinn was just a beautiful, beautiful, wonderful child, and Frank's dear love. He was so thrilled. Quinn, when he was 17 and a half, junior in high school, was in a motorcycle accident which took his life. So he passed away at 17 and a half, and he was a deeply believing Christian. God was doing a strange thing in all of our lives. Not strange thing. He was calling all of us to be His. And my youngest daughter, Karen, had actually prayed all of us into the kingdom. God had told her that all of her family, all of us, would wear white. Cliff felt a tap on his shoulder. And he looked, and it was the Lord saying, "Follow me." And Cliff thought for a minute and decided, "Yes, I will follow you, Jesus. I will follow you, Lord." Because he had discovered that all the money in the world, and he'd had an awful lot of money, and all the toys that money buys did not bring happiness. He found also that all the power that he had did not bring happiness, absolutely did not. So that's why when the Lord tapped him on the shoulder and said, "Follow me," he said, "All right." What God had told Karen happened, including her father at age 79. And so we're a family of believing Christians, which is very exciting. I do want to say to all of you who are to come, my great-grandchildren, great, on and on and on, that this is the one way that you'll get to know your ridiculous grandmother, JoJo. And just think of me and know that even though I don't know you yet, I love you. Bye-bye.